Welcome back. This is the second half of our Kumiko chessboard and chess pieces series in our live stream classes on Fusion 360 for beginner woodworkers. And as you have probably noticed, this is somewhat less beginner than some of our other projects. The last time we looked at this series of classes, which was fairly recently, we created an entire chess board with inlaid Kumiko and glass, and it really wasn't that bad. It took us less than an hour to model the whole thing. It might take you a bit more than an hour to make it, but that's not what we're doing here today. At some point, I might actually make the thing and show how it is constructed, but that will be many hours of work, and for the moment we are focused more on teaching you how to model in Fusion. So we are here in the academic license version of Fusion 360, but the free version gives you all the features we are going to be using today and in every one of our free classes. So get yourself a copy of Autodesk Fusion 360. It will cost you absolutely nothing unless you're going to use it for commercial purposes. And if you're going to use it for commercial purposes, I figure it's only fair that you give them some money for their wonderful software. It's not perfect, but it is absolutely by far the only piece of software a woodworker should be using for modeling anything. And realistically, it's probably the only piece of software most people should be using unless they have need of something more powerful. Okay, so we are going to start today, and we are going to actually model not just one thing, but 6. We'll start from the top here, and we are going to draw a few of these boxes. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a box. We're not going to make it from the center today because we're not just going to be doing one box. We're actually going to be doing 6 boxes. I'm going to make these 2 sides equal, turn it into a square, and because the grid pattern on our Kumiko chessboard is 80 millimeters, it's 82 including the 2mm filler strip, so we will call this 80 millimeters. And we are going to make some guidelines through the center here. 1, 2, 3, so we know where all our points are. We will make all of these guides. So we will hit X on all of them. And what I'm going to do is I will say create rectangular pattern, and I'm going to make all of these. Duplicate across, and I want to have exactly 6 of them. We're going to say these are 120 millimeters apart just for the sake of having some space between them. And now I can model my 6 pieces. There isn't an easy way to type little notes on the screen. I wish they would add that. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to think about what is the simplest piece on the chessboard, and that is the pawn. So I'm going to draw a circle. I will not worry about drawing it the right size. We're going to say that our dimension on this is 55 millimeters. And we will say modify offset, and we will give it a 2mm offset. We want it to be going inside. So we'll flip it, and now we have a 2mm offset circle. That, I think, is a good start for our pawn. We will just have a nice little circle ring. Now, the next one that we actually want to do is probably the next most complex piece. We're going to say dimension this circle to be 70 millimeters. And again, we are going to offset this ring 2 millimeters. We'll flip it so it is on the inside. Now, what we have is a larger circle, but we don't want to have to worry about which one is large and which one is small. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a center point rectangle, and I'm going to go all the way out to the outside circle. Now, this is a little bit like cheating, because what I actually wanted to do is go to 2 points on this inside circle and fill in that center gap. Now, I could do that, and I could make sure that I model that center gap, but I really don't want to. So I'm just going to overlap it, and when I select the sections, it will already have that other piece filled in. So now I'm going to make that 2 millimeters wide again, and I am going to take that piece and mirror the two lines that I just created across this 45-degree center line and hit OK. And now we have a cross for our bishop. The next thing I want to do is, again, I will draw a circle in the center. It was exactly 70 millimeters. Now, hit dimension. I will pick that and select 70 millimeters. Now, the next piece that I want to do is I am going to do our castles, our rooks. So I will take a center point rectangle. Oh, I haven't done the offset yet. Offset, 2 millimeters. I'll make it inside. So I will take my center point rectangle, and I am going to draw a box that goes all the way to the outside edge here, and I need to give it some dimensions. From the outside edge, we're going to make this. Oops. I don't need to make that anything. All I need to do is make sure that it touches that outside edge, and that is good. And I will make sure that this piece, this inside line, is equal to this inside line that I created here. So they are now both 2 millimeters. That way I don't have to type it in the next time. And we can see that this is actually already the right size. Now, instead of mirroring it somewhere to make a cross, we're going to make it a circular pattern. I will take those two lines. I will say that it is going to rotate around the center point of that circle. And I am going to make it 4 times. And now we have our castle. The next one that I'm going to do is a knight. We're going to hit dimension, dimension that piece, and again we will copy our 70 millimeters. We're going to hit O for offset, just like we did before. Getting the hang of this, I'm sure, with all this practice. And now what I want to do is very much the same as with that castle, and I'm going to make it go out here to the outside edge, but we're going to do it a little higher this time. Now, I will make that piece equal. We will have it 2 millimeters, exactly the same way as we did over here. It is 2 millimeters. Now, let's drag this over a little closer to the center. I will give that a dimension, and it is going to be 25 millimeters inset. Now, if instead of making a circular pattern with 4 sides, I'm going to take that object, I will make the center point exactly the same, but we are going to have 3 of them because the knight has a totally different aspect and look to the castle. You can almost see that that would be the shape of the helmet head looking down. So you have the bishop's mitred cross, you have the castle's fortifications, and you have the knight's pointed helmet. I think we're doing pretty well here with these. Now, the other thing that we want to do is we want to have a queen, and we want to have a king. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to draw, instead of a circle, I'm going to draw a square. But I'm going to say dimension the same size as the circle, which will make it considerably larger, in fact. But that's what we want. The queen is very important. We're going to say 2 millimeter offset to the inside in much the same way. And I think that works out quite well. So for our queen, what we want to do is we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take our curve tool, and we are going to go from the outside center to the outside center, and we are going to make a nice curve. What I want to do with that curve is offset it in one direction, 1 millimeter, and I'm going to offset it in the other direction, 1 millimeter. Oops. That. I'm going to say offset Offset the original. Oh, I clicked the wrong one. Offset that 1 millimeter. That should work out quite well. We're going to click on the center one and hit X. Sometimes modeling these is a little difficult. All right, so we will now take those two pieces. We will create a, I clicked the wrong one. We'll create a circular pattern, 1, 2. We'll say the center point is the center. And instead of making 3, which does make for an interesting perspective, we will make 4 of them. And that is that. They are actually already defined. Sometimes with curves, Fusion gets a little confused. And that is our queen. What we're going to do is we'll make a king in the same way. We'll make a square. We will hit D for dimension. We will copy the dimension of our queen square. We will offset that 2 millimeters, and we will make sure it goes offset to the inside, so the king and the queen are the same size. Now, the symbol for the king is generally a cross, so what we're going to do is we're going to make a nice little piece here. We will give this a dimension. Whoops, I don't want that dimension. I want the dimension from one line to the other, and we are going to call it 25 millimeters. And I am going to say this is equal. This is equal to this 2 millimeters that we did for everything else. 2 millimeters. Where have we got a 2 millimeter rectangle? We'll use this one. We'll just copy the same dimension rather than typing it in. Now, if we say create rectangular pattern, we will pick the 2 outside edges. I will pick the right tool. We will create circular pattern. Pick the 2 outside edges and the circle and the center of our grid square. We will say we want to copy that 4 times, and we now have our king piece. All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to take each of these. We've now created 6 chess piece outlines, and we will say finish sketch. So what I want to do is I want to take the first one of these, which is the pawn, and the simplest one. We will select that outside ring, and we are going to say our distance will be 22 millimeters up. And we'll call that a new component. And we'll say pawn. Not bad. So we've made 1 piece. And yes, we have to make 16 of those in real life, but for the moment, we're going to make just 1 piece. All right, so the next one we're going to make is we're going to make this outside ring for our bishop. We're going to make the outside ring and the inside cross separately, and you'll see why in a moment. All right, so we're going to say new component, and we are going to make that distance to object, and we'll pick the top of our pawn. So they are going to be the same height. We'll say new component and hit OK. We'll call that bishop. Before we go on and do the inside, what we're going to do is make all the outside walls for each of these pieces. So we just need to select all the pieces that make the outside wall, which is a little tedious, but that's okay. What we're actually going to do is we're going to pick them all at once and do exactly the same thing. We'll go over and do this for our queen piece. Just going through and clicking them. If you've ever done those adult coloring books and you find them relaxing, I've never found them to be particularly, but that's what we've just done here. It's like an adult coloring book. And we'll say new body to object, and we'll pick the top of that bishop. We could have just done them all in one shot, pawn included, but I figured it was better to show it a few times. So we now have this bodies folder here, and we're going to take each of those and say create component from body. This one here, this is our king. This is our knight. This is our queen. And the last one will be our rook. All right, so we're doing pretty well so far. We have all our outside surfaces. Now we just need to do the infill. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn off all these so we can more easily see our grid pattern. We will say extrude. We will extrude the inside part of our bishop, and we're going to say that this distance will be 32 millimeters up. Remember, that's not the same distance we already did. We're going to do that, and we're going to see how it looks. We're not sure if that's going to be exactly the look we want, but I think it'll be pretty close, and we can always modify it after. Remember, better to get stuff modeled and play with it than it is to try to figure everything out right at the beginning. Now, if we look at this, you can see why I went to the other side. This is a curved line here, but we don't have to worry about picking the curve in two pieces like we would if we had connected them on the inside with that rectangle. We connected them on the outside, so the overlap doesn't matter. All right, so we'll take that body and we'll drag it into our bishop folder, our bishop component, which means it is now going to be hidden. We're going to do the same thing with our with our rook, also called a castle. Oops. Just need to pick all the pieces. We don't need to pick the pieces that overlap with their outside grid because that is already there. We will say to object, turn on our bishop, and we'll pick the top of our bishop. All right, top of our bishop infill pieces, say new body, and we'll drag that over into our rook folder. We'll leave our bishop on for the moment. Actually, we'll just turn on the rook as well, and the pawn. So we're starting to get there. This is good. Now, we want to do the same thing for the infill on our knight. The irony of modeling knights in the morning does not escape me. I'm sure you will agree. To object, and we'll make that the top, same as our rook. New body, and we'll put that in with our knight. We'll turn the knight on. We will say extrude again. This one is a little more tedious because of all the little pieces, but there aren't that many of them. We've actually kept these pieces very, very simple today. We will say distance to object, pick the top of our knight, new body, and that is our queen, which we can now turn on. The reason I'm doing this with the modeled off is so I don't have to worry about selecting all these while ignoring this outside edge. What we'll do is we will say extrude, and we will extrude these middle pieces. And we are going to make the king taller. We will make the king, we'll make the king 48 tall. And I think we're going to go back and make a slight change to our queen here. And we're going to make our queen, instead of to the object, we'll make it 42 tall. And we'll turn this body into part of our king, turn the king back on, and turn our sketch off. And now what you see is we have all these chess pieces. They have a fixed size base, and the pawns are actually a little smaller, and they have these inset pieces. If you're wondering where the idea for those inset pieces come from, these are the round section with the high infill is actually a traditional look and feel for Japanese wooden rice cooking pots. If you ever want to see where this idea comes from, just go and look for traditional Japanese cookware and the wooden ones, which are not really used anymore, but they remind you of a long time ago. They look sort of like this. Now, I think these look particularly nice, so I'm going to hit A for appearance, and we're going to make them match up. We're going to change the whole thing to ash to match our chessboard's framing. And I'm going to go in and pick my cherry semi-gloss, and I'm just going to make these inside pieces cherry. I think that looks particularly nice. So the next thing that I want to be able to do is I want to create a whole other set of these. Because these are going to be imported as the white pieces. Now, what I can do is, I can say create, create mirror, objects, bodies. Do I have a mirror line that I can flip these across? Yes, I do indeed. And I'm going to flip these across this center line. I will select bodies, select components. Yes. I will select all these components. Let's see if it will let me, oh, come on. Create, mirror, components. Select all, now it will let me select them all. And I will flip them across this center line. Will let me give a little space between, and that is good. Now, the question is, has this been fixed? There is a glitch that doesn't allow me to change the appearance across a mirror. They're supposed to have fixed it. They have told me it is fixed. Let's see if it works. It does! Excellent. So I'm going to make all these other ones walnut semi-gloss. And that gives us our two totally different colors. We could actually accentuate that by using another wood, and I'm going to make the outside rings of these darker ones from maple, which I think will make it look a little more distinctive so you know which ones are light and which ones are dark. So I think we are good for the moment. That's doing pretty well. The only other thing that we're going to want to do is we're going to need to duplicate some of these so you can actually make them for the board. So I'll show you how to quickly duplicate components. I will say rectangular pattern. And we are going to take our pawn. We will pick our two components. We are going to duplicate our two components, and we need 8 of them. We're going to move them in this direction. And we will space them exactly 180 millimeters apart. So now we have 8 sets of pawns. We're going to do the same thing, and we could have done this all for these at once, but now that you've got the hang of it from doing it with a simple duplication, what we're going to do is we are going to duplicate, we don't need to duplicate the king and the queen. Don't know why I picked those. We are going to pick our direction, go out here, and we will say 180, same as we did for the pawns, but we don't need 3 of them, we only need 2. We'll hit OK. And now we have created our entire chess set. It doesn't look just like a chess set, it actually looks very much like a collection of rings. But I think we're doing well with this, and that is all the pieces we need for a game of chess. So, this has been rather quick. We've modeled 6 different objects that are all fairly similar. We've done them with our appearances and turned them into a set of modern chess pieces to accompany our Kumiko inlay chess board. that we did in the last element of this series. If you have found this useful, please click the like button, share, and subscribe. We do lots of live classes here, so ring the bell on the subscription so you can come back whenever we go fully live. Sometimes we do this live to video, and sometimes we do it live straight to YouTube, Facebook, and our other platforms. If you have any questions, stick them in the comments below. Anything that you'd like to see, suggestions for other things that you would find useful to have modeled. If you have problems with any of your modeling, just send us over a couple of screenshots and an explanation of what you were trying to do, and we'll either try to get an answer to you by email, or maybe we'll just take it and model it live for a class. Of course, we'll ask your permission if we are going to use one of your ideas in the class first, so you don't have to worry about that. Feel free to share anything with us that you are working on. We'd love to see what you're doing. And if you decide to model and make one of our ideas in real life, take a picture and send it over. We would love to see it. Okay, that's everything for today. I hope that's been helpful to you. Have fun modeling and building in your shop, and check us out next time here on our live stream classes for woodworkers. Have a great day. Thanks.